All right, it is Wednesday. It's 4:30 p.m. Central Time, which means it's time for the office hours here on the ViaMonstra Academy. I'm Johan, Andrew is Andrew, and we will be your hosts for the next hour, happily accepting questions on anything related to MDT, ConfigMgr, Intune, systems management in general, and of course the ecosystem around all those technologies and platforms. So that being said, as usual, let the questions come in. All right, and we are back. So I know, Andrew, that you have stumbled across a few things recently in the uh, sort of ecosystem around Intune primarily, but also a few other things.
Yeah, definitely. A couple of pretty cool things I saw this week. Go ahead and share my screen here.
Yeah, let's see if I can display it as soon as it shows up. Here we go. And there we
So,
are. Nice.
a very anticipated blog post coming out of the Workplace Ninja Summit this week from Maurice Daly, the folks over at Cloudway and MSM Point Manager, a new update compliance workbook. Um, we've talked about this update compliance workbook or this dashboard for quite a while in our courses now when we talk about software updates. Um, this is some pretty cool stuff that uses a combination of log analytics and endpoint analytics to run some proactive remediations on um, endpoints and send some data up to log analytics. And this dashboard basically takes that data as a workbook and gives you a nice overview of what your organization looks like. Um, so I'll actually show real quick what this currently looks like in my lab tenant. This is the version that we were using or have been using in several organizations. It shows sort of the patching trend line and some additional information. Um, but I thought if we have an extra couple of minutes, we could just go ahead and add the new workbook in here, see how easy it is.
Yeah, why not? What could possibly go wrong with a extremely live demo?
Live and brand new. All right, so let's see. When we go into our workbooks in Intune, we just want to do a new workbook. And here at the bottom of the blog post, if you've never configured this before, I would absolutely recommend going through the initial configuration blog post and understanding exactly how to configure this entire solution. Um, but if you've used it before, you can scroll down to the bottom and there is a link to their GitHub that has the code we need to copy in here. And let me see if I remember. I think this is where we need to copy it. Let's see. No, it is one of these. This one. So this little button here allows us to edit the specific code for the workbook that we have. So we hit done. There we go. We have the new dashboard, and it's already populating in my case because I've been, as I said, I've been using this, and the data already exists in the log analytics workspace. But pretty cool stuff. I like the active device count, Windows Update for business devices, issues in our environment, devices that need reboots, it looks like. So some pretty good stuff. additional data points and just another way to visualize what's going on with update compliance in your environment.
That is pretty cool.
Go ahead and save that. And then I had another one. I haven't gotten into this too much yet. But there's a blog post that interested me from Matthias Melkerson about the surrounding Intune changes and reporting on those Intune changes with Logic apps or Power apps. So again, I haven't gotten into this too much, but I'm starting to see a little bit more and more surrounding Logic apps and Power Automate, specifically as it relates to some of the systems that we're talking about here: Intune, ConfigMgr, Azure AD, that sort of thing. And it seems like it can be a pretty powerful and easy way to automate some tasks like reporting or notifications, and I'm sure some other things as well within these environments. So I'm going to at least take these two blog posts. These really stuck out to me this week, and we'll make sure that we get these posted in the links. So this one's pretty cool because it just shows all of the changes over the last 24 hours in your Intune tenant, it looks like. And it's just using Logic apps in the background to go through a flow, tap into that data, and then send a report off. A lot of additional code here. It does look like this relies on log analytics as well, just like our the previous example with the Windows Update Compliance dashboard. So, pretty cool stuff. Like I said, those just really stuck out to me in a sea of major things that happened within a week in this community.
It is pretty cool, indeed. I spent some time this week on converting one of my CMD setups, because I have two of them, but one of them were created using the old classic method that is slowly going away here, and I decided to convert it to a VM scale set instead, to be basically prepared for when they're shutting down the old one. Plus, the beautiful thing about the VM scale set is that it, of course, also give you the option of specifying which size you want to that VM. So if you only have a little lab environment, you can configure to use a B2S instance, which is $40-50 a month, versus the default D2, D3 something instance, or A2 instance these days, which is maybe $100 a month, something like that. But if you only have a few test clients, you don't really need to have a VM instance that is capable of dealing with 5,000-6,000 clients. Very few organizations or people have a lab with that many clients they are just playing around with. So anyhow, my past experience with that conversion was not very good, but I was hoping it might have changed, might have been fixed. Let's go ahead and try it, and obviously it failed miserably. So I figured I could share a little bit about that. So I'll go ahead and share the screen here. So not this site server, but this one here is where I used to have a cloud management gateway set up in a classic mode. So that's where it basically will give you a different name here, and you will have a different URL, because now they're also adding in the region into the name. So I had to update my DNS, etc., for that to work. But basically, when you have the old classic one, and I actually saved away a screenshot, can bring over just because it's fun. saved some of my findings here. So this is what it looks like before. And in the features, a few ConfigMgr versions back, there is actually a feature you can enable that makes this one show up nicely, because it's not there by default. So you would have to go to your feature list here first, and you need to turn it on to be able to do that conversion. Now, that didn't help because I tried that one and it just miserably failed. And so I eventually ended up just doing what pretty much everyone else is doing, it seems. I just deleted the instance, waited until it was deleted, and then created a new one. And that was it. That was done an hour later. So it's not too terribly complicated. Just make sure that you have added in the additional resource providers in your tenant, because the scale set is now using Vault, and not everybody is actually having that resource provider enabled beforehand. But that was fairly easy to register that one in, pretty much like we've done the other storage and classic compute in the past and whatnot. So that was my, must have been Monday morning, Tuesday morning, yesterday. Sounds like yesterday.
Sounds right.
Yeah. So anyhow, don't feel panic if the conversion doesn't work. You're in a good company, like many others, and just go ahead and delete it and create a new one. If this is a larger production environment, you actually may want to keep the old one around for a bit and spin up a new one side by side. Wait until the clients figure out about that one, and then you can go ahead and delete the old one. So that was my morning yesterday. Now, we had two questions coming in already. One that actually, we usually don't see questions from Twitter, but there was actually a gentleman that sent me a DM just before we started here, and I just happened to see it on my phone. So why not? That works as well. Otherwise, we do accept questions on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and we will see them live on a screen that we have here. I have here to my left here. So the question was regarding hardware hashes in ConfigMgr. How are they actually being created? And this is a hardware hash for Windows Autopilot. And the Autopilot side on the server doesn't care how you generated the hash, which tells that this is a unique device. It just cares that it actually has one. So I forgot which ConfigMgr version, but it's been available for quite a while. That if you go to your ConfigMgr reports and you search for Autopilot, there will be an Autopilot device information report. So if you run that report, either in a browser or in the old school tool here, it will simply give you all devices that you have and the hardware hash that they have. And you can save this out in an Excel spreadsheet. You can export it, whatever means you want. But this hardware hash describes this particular computer. So this would be the equivalent of going to the same device, a device with a serial number in this case, and run the get Windows Autopilot info script that most organizations has been using to get the hardware hash. So one way or another, as long as you get the hash, life is good. The question was basically, where did this hardware come from? Well, it's come from basically WMI, a namespace that is available in Windows that is queried around this. And Niehaus, actually, or Michael Niehaus, he posted a blog post a little while ago on how to decode that one nicely. So let me bring up that link here. I should probably mention that for those of you that are new to the office hours, every time we share links and whatnot, you can always find them up on the Academy site under the office hours course or community edition course, or you can find them under the videos on YouTube. We add them in there a little bit later. But this is the one I was referring to. So here is a reference to the autopilot script that I mentioned, again, to generate the hash. And then there is a reference to this little tool here that can be used to decode that hardware hash into its subcomponents here. So something that looks like this from the beginning, pretty much what I showed you in the report, you can actually break it down and it will tell you what each and every of those sections are and how they break down into the hardware they correspond to. So you will see things like, all right, there's a processor threads, number of cores, what CPU it is, there was system time, local time, and since some of these are variables based on time, obviously they will be different every time you run this script. But autopilot doesn't really care about the system time. This is just for reference inside of the hash. Autopilot couldn't care less if you did created a hardware hash at 11 or 11:15. It's still going to recognize that as a unique machine. But bottom line, this is where the hardware is the hardware hash is decompiled into. If you really want to see more details, of course, you can open up the script itself. So I believe I have a copy, not here, but here. Where did I put that script? Here. So this has been, of course, a few versions back or updated over time. But this is the script that reads that information and eventually populates this. So this is the SIM instance that is being queried. This SIM instance is only available in Windows, not the WinP, unfortunately. Would that be nice? But it also grabs some other information on the machine. So yeah, that was pretty much the answer to that question. Then I got another question on Twitter this morning. I had a little discussion there. There was a gentleman who was a little bit upset about model names being weird. And I'm not sure what it is to vendors and generally model names that make sense. But I have seen vendors, won't mention any name, obviously back in the days at IBM, that used to surround their model names with something like this, just because it looked good. And that, of course, makes it super easy to parse in scripts and whatnot. This particular question was related to VMware, where VMware has a version in it, and they put a comma in the name. And this, of course, great if you're using comma-separated text files or something to export information. But model names being weird is simply a fact because vendors have lost the touch a little bit sometimes with the reality of the folks that actually have to deploy stuff to their machines. Unfortunately, there is no the model is, of course, a standard in WMI and the SIM namespace, but how they're being created is far from a standard. This, to me, is a decent model name. You get the idea. No weird characters, no funky comma-separated stuff in them, whatever. But what you will find is that when you have model names being weird, you can normalize them using what we often reference to a model alias script. That can be VB script, that could be PowerShell. It's simply a script that takes garbage in and puts a better name out for us. So I can show an example that has been around for many, many years. It's for MDT Light Touch, and this question was for MDT Light Touch, so that's why I'm showing that one. But basically, in MDT Light Touch, if your init file specifies a VB script, it will run that script, and in this case, it will set two variables to the result of two different functions in the script. So if I run a normal gather, I'm just going to open up a PowerShell prompt and run a gather process. I'm going to delete the folder first that I have done here. And I'm going to run the gather script. This is the normal one without any model alias. And it will tell me that the model name of this particular computer is a HPC 8040 workstation. That's the machine I do most of my demos from. But now, if I run a script that checks for model alias instead, let's see, here. I will get some other variables back. So I will also get a model alias, which is this. Now, for this particular model, I didn't need to do any normalization. Whatever HP provided from the beginning is good enough for me. But for example, when you work with Lenovo, asking the computer system class for the information, it's kind of begging for pain. It's much better to ask the computer system product or any of the other classes that are available. For those of you who have played around with the modern driver management solution, for example, you guys know that Maurice Daly spent quite a good chunk of time figuring out good ways to query for different vendors. So if you open up one of those scripts, this one here, and search for, say, Panasonic, you will find here an entire section that simply deals with if Microsoft, this is how we determine model, system SKU, etc. If HP, this is how we do that. If Dell, this is how we do that. If Lenovo, let's not ask computer system, let's ask computer product instead because it's better. The beautiful thing these days is that this fairly new class, system information, is often really good to ask for. But the concept here is we do different things for different vendors. And a model alias script works the same way. So if I go to that script that I showed you earlier, this one here, well, let me do version 2. It's still an old script, but it's been around for a long time. Here is normalization for vendors. If it detects any of these, respond back Dell. If it finds this, which very few people know what it is, spit back Panasonic. If it's VMware Inc. with the comma, just respond with VMware instead. So again, taking strange names and putting them back into something that makes sense. And the same thing for the models. This is how we can have different classes being called for different types of models. So you can have your own conditions, your own exclusions, where you want to play around with this. So if you find weird stuff, this was one of the machines I had where the model names was actually this. There was a time where HP thought that including like some sort of a batch number in it was a good idea. Thankfully, they stopped. But this is what you can do. This is an example for IBM, where they have these fancy, in this case, it was brackets and a few dashes in after, and you can just return it with no, return this instead, so I know what it is. So on my blog, Amy wrote a post back in the days on how to add this into ConfigMgr, but this is exact same thing as you would do for MDT Light Touch. So put it in your init file, copy the scripts in the scripts folder, and you're done. And then you can work with these rather than model and vendor or make and model. So I'll put that link in the chat as well. My little collection here.
That's pretty cool. I don't think I've ever seen that demo before.
No, it's handy because vendors are vendor, and they will always come up with things that make deployment challenging, and it's kind of up to us to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that were the questions on hardware hash, model alias. I covered the CMD stuff. Any other questions out there? Anything we can answer for you? We have a whopping 32 minutes at our disposal. And I'm on my third cup of coffee, so I'm actually not too unpleasant to talk to at the moment. It's usually a key success.
Have to have the coffee.
Yeah. Gonna celebrate tonight though. I started my morning with a shiny root canal. That was
Ooh.
a wake up call.
Yeah, I bet.
But it's done. The pain is gone, and life is good. So
Uh,
I'm a happy camper.
that's good. A celebration is in order then.
It is.
Have
It is.
yourself a nice dinner.
I was thinking more liquid form and shape, but yeah.
Oh, you're speaking my language.
Yes. uh, all right. Any questions? We are keeping an eye on the feed on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in there, or we will have to go back as usual and talk Star Wars for half an hour, which is not entirely bad.
No, I mean, when we have this, when we do office hours next week, we'll be hours away from watching 3 full episodes of Andor.
Oh yeah, that will be fun. That will be good stuff.
Yep.
And of course, the announcement of Mandalorian coming back in February next year. Very exciting. Very good trailer as well.
A favorite of ours.
Yes,
sure.
very much so.
I've got my man.
If you have ever attended one of our Intune courses, you know that every single user we create is usually from the Star Wars ecosystem there.
Yep.
All right. Any questions at all? We'll be happy to answer. While we're waiting for that, I hope you guys didn't miss, but tomorrow morning at 9, we are back with a new community course, free to attend. 2 hours regarding speeding up networking with everything that Microsoft offers in the area. So configuring DO for Microsoft Intune, setting up Microsoft Connected Cache servers, implementing all of these fun protocols, not just for ConfigMgr, but also for MDT extensions and other things, because you'll be surprised how much traffic you have in your environment that are using these technologies or can use them if you enable them. And it's all about pretty much reduce network impact in the environment. So if you have distributed environments where you have a lot of, locations and offices and whatnot, if you can embrace just a little bit peer-to-peer in between your clients, you can actually reduce a lot of the traffic that goes over the WAN link, that goes over the internet links, and whatnot. And do this right, you can do up to 90% reduction of ConfigMgr stuff and about 60 to 80% of everything else that Windows is doing in the background. So if you haven't anything planned for the morning, why not join us? It's a live session. It's me, Andreas, and Phil presenting this. So hope you can join us there.
Not only is there always great content when you guys present on this topic, I feel like I learn something new every single time, but watching you three present together is fun. That's
Thank
for
you,
sure.
sir. Appreciate it.
So I definitely recommend it to anybody that
Yeah,
hasn't seen this before.
thanks. All right, we have a question coming in on LinkedIn. It's from Tim. We use Intune to manage Defender, but what is the best way to block other Intune app policy deployments to non-persistence VMs? That was a good question. I haven't seen like a ready-made filter for that.
No.
I can't say I'm the biggest fan of managing VMs that are not persistent. I typically stay away of, for example, adding any sort of agent to them, including ConfigMgr and whatnot, because ConfigMgr just gets confused. And I have a feeling that that's going to be the case for Intune as well. If you're constantly having something there and then you rip it away, and it's because the user logged off, you get much more successful management platform if they actually stay those VMs. So it's more like you actually just turn them off and bring them back online again. So I'm not the biggest fan of managing non-persistent VMs.
Yeah, I'm
But
sort of in
I
the
can
same.
see, of course, the need to get definitions out there because they get updated quite frequently and the user may use that machine for a day or so. But typically, yeah, I don't have a great answer for that one. Tim is basically clarifying, yeah, security requirement that those the Defender updates needs to come down fairly quickly. I don't know, maybe some detection in the proactive remediation script, something like that, that figures out that we're running on a non-persistent system and simply behaves differently. Can force definition updates that way. That's the only thing that comes to mind. Someone listening to this and have an idea, I would love to hear it. Someone has stumbled across this ask and have a good solution for it. I have not. Anything you have seen, Andrew?
No, I'm sort of in the same boat where I know it doesn't help Tim's question specifically, but even when trying to reuse task sequences to create like a golden image or something like that, uh, we're always trying to figure out ways to rip out the config manager client at the end or do something just to keep those um, off that type of VM. So I'm sorry I don't have anything useful for for this.
I mean, I stumbled across a post. I can bring it to the screen. I'm not sure how much it will help. It's the first time I've seen it, but it kind of spots at least the problem here. This is, of course, not for Intune, I believe, but it does talk about the challenge a bit. So maybe that can be of help. At least we can share the link in the link collection here. So have something to go back to. First question we get is like, oh, yes, a question. And I'm like, sorry.
It's a good question though.
Was a good question. I mean, as usual, a good gentleman to loop into the discussion would be Mr. Trond. So I'm now about to give him a hard time by just calling him out like that. But he is pretty active on Twitter. I will get his Twitter alias up on the screen in just a second. He's a Citrix guru, but turned Intune guru lately. But he has done a lot of work around all these different VDI solutions. I would not hesitate to send him a message and see if he has any idea. That would be a good starting point. Donna might be a good option as well. ConfigMgr expert turning Windows 365, and that of course ties into the same type of scenarios. So maybe that. She was on our call 2 weeks ago, so she joined us to answer questions on everything related to that. Great session, by the way. That was fun.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, great speaker, great expert in these areas. So might known her for her WinWich tool as well. It's been around for a good few years. So, all right. Any other questions? Keeping an eye on them here. There are a few questions coming in on YouTube. So, hi there. Can you please show us how to migrate sequences from old servers to new ones? Okay. Few options there. ConfigMgr does have a ready-made format or option in the console to export sequences. So I can pick any of my sequences here, and I can go ahead and export it. And during the export, I have to specify zip file, and I can export it without dependencies, meaning without the packages or with the packages. And then, of course, I can import that on any other system that happen to run ConfigMgr. Now, there was a bug back in the 2103 timeframe where they kind of broke this kind of export, but it's been fixed long gone since. So this one is fully working. In earlier versions of ConfigMgr, it was very, very easy to do the same thing with PowerShell. That now have been changed. If you have scripts, you may have to update those to do that export import. Another options, if say that you have a lab environment and then you have a production environment, what you can do, as long as the site code is different, is that you can take your production environment and actually just point it over to the lab environment. And when you do that, you can now start to copy objects over from that environment to the new one. So in the console, through PowerShell, or through migration options, that would be the different options that are available to grab sequences over. Then, of course, you can fully script the creation of task sequences. It's been available for a long time. So you can actually generate sequences from scratch, but without touching the console. I think I have a few examples, at least some older examples on my blog here. Because I remember playing around with it when it was released. And that was a while ago. Yeah, here, back in 2017. It's been around for some time. Now there are hundreds of more commandlets available, but then this is what you needed to create the sequence. So put that link in the collection. So hopefully that can be helpful.
Like that note at the top, 190, or I'm sorry, 109 commandlets. We are definitely well beyond that now.
Yeah, I haven't checked lately the numbers, but I just upgraded one of my site server this morning to 2207, I believe. I have to check that. No, this one is still on 2203, but for the fun of it, we can ask.
Was that before or after the root canal? I'm just glad that you didn't do your late night right before bed upgrade. Wow.
Well, 2203 is up to 1100. So I wonder if I have a system running 2207. That would be fun just to see the difference. Ah, this one is.
There you go.
Let's borrow that same query. And yeah, no, I should have used measure command for those of you who are into the count operator in PowerShell. But this one is good to use as long as it doesn't return just one. Then it kind of freaks out. Let me open up the console here once. I remember after upgrades, sometimes the PowerShell module doesn't yet initialize unless you open it once first. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to rerun that query. 1174. What number did I have on 2203?
1184?
So it looks like 10 less. That's usually not the case. So some has changed, for sure. All right, interesting. It's something for the evening to review.
Mm-hmm.
All right, see what other questions are coming in. Matthew is asking, what would be the recommended way to update drivers on existing machines? Well, I will tell you this. I recommend to stay away from vendor tools. I'm not the biggest fan of them, any of them. Instead, I recommend using this one here from Morris Daly and Nikolai Anderson, because the modern driver management tool also does driver updates. So in my environment here, for example, I have a bunch of ConfigMgr packages, one package per model. Dell, I think I have an HP or two here, yeah. But the Dell ones, for example, they're all distributed. And I can simply push out a tiny sequence to existing computers, like this one here. It's a very big sequence. It's a user account that connects up to the admin service. It's a script that figures out what drivers that are in need of an update, and it runs update of them. Done. Reboot.
Easy.
And this one, yeah, and this one works with Dell, Lenovo, HP, Microsoft. You pick the models you want. You have the tool create the packages, and then you deploy the sequence as often as you want to have those updated, those drivers. Works remarkably well, and since the driver packages are compressed, you will find that they download quite quickly to the machines. So these driver packages here, if you look at the source, they are just WIM files. Because WIM files are much more effective to download than 1,000 small files. So if I open this WIM file in 7-zip, this is where you find the typical vendor package with, all the drivers in them. So this is what I recommend to do driver updates. Good stuff. Shri is asking, can we capture multiple partitions through MDT? Absolutely, yes. That's doable. Do you just have to add that into the script to capture not just the Windows volume, but additional folders. MDT, when it does a capture, is actually just running dism to do a capture of a given volume. You can change that to capture more volumes. It's fairly easy. If you need some inspiration on command lines, simply find that MDT script in question. Probably have it here somewhere. Go to the installation folder, distribution scripts. It's part of the CTI backup script. Language VB. There should be a dism somewhere here. Yeah. So this is where you see the capture image location, the image file, and the path it's capturing from. So modify this, change it to your heart's content, and it will do a backup of it. That being said, if it's just data volumes, you don't have to do the capture EMP. You can do it during build as well. That works too. There was a follow-up question on YouTube regarding migration tools in ConfigMgr. Yeah, that was the node I showed you guys earlier here, where you can point ConfigMgr to a different server and create migration jobs to migrate those sequences over. Something to know is that if you have sequences that have been extended with custom templates, like MDT sequences, don't have one over there, but I should have a few here. There are some actions that will fail to migrate over. So if I take an MDT sequence, you will find some steps in here, like the gather step, that have like a little logo here in the bottom. They will fail to migrate over. So what you have to do for that is you have to go to the other server, make a copy of these sequences, and simply remove the step that have all of these different steps. Like this one here is also an MDT action. It has this one. So you have to go ahead and remove all of these, and then you can migrate things over. So it depends on how much changes you've done to the sequences. Sometimes it's equally quick to just create new ones. But this limitation is only for custom templates. So, all right, let's see what else is coming in. Question coming in from LinkedIn. How we unenroll into managed devices from another company domain and join them to our tenant Intune. Well, that depends a little bit. If you buy a machine, say a used computer or a refurbished computer, something like that, and you enroll that through Autopilot and you realize that it's not your organization that you see in the screen, that's where you actually have to either reach out to that organization and have them remove it, which is probably not going to happen, but you have to place a support call with Microsoft. And you have to prove that you now own this computer. Basically show them an invoice or receipt or something, and then they can help for that scenario. So if it's just a normal enrollment that is not done through Autopilot, there is no hash involved, etc., you can typically just leave a machine and join back again, at least in my experience. But Autopilot is special. So a support call or a support email from the portal will take care of that problem. Awesome questions. It's like people are like lining up and just submits everything at once. All right. Anything else? We have still 8 more minutes to go. One gentleman stopping by just saying, thank you so much for the help in your previous session. Apparently we said something right, so that's good. Take that as yes.
Appreciate the kind words.
Yes. All right. We'll give folks a minute or two to submit more questions. Otherwise, we'll simply call it the evening and give a few minutes back to your schedule. All right. Well, let's see. There's a question regarding, is ADFS a big issue when using Intune and Autopilot? In general, ADFS should be stayed away from as a whole, but it's not really related to Intune connectors and Autopilot, because Intune is syncing devices, or Azure AD is syncing devices typically through AD Connect. And in terms of hybrid join scenarios with VPN clients, if not, there is a second connector involved as well, Intune to request that offline domain object. So typically you should not be using ADFS. You should be using AD Connect for the core sync when you go from on-premise after Azure AD, and the offline domain connector if you need to support that additional scenario. At least for Autopilot.
Yeah, and I would say having moved away from ADFS a few years back, especially now that you have stage rollout and things like that to move over to Azure AD, definitely recommend doing that where possible.
Yeah, so I remember seeing a thread just a few days ago on Twitter, basically claiming that ADFS could become a bigger security risk compared to doing AD Connect.
Mm-hmm.
Diego is asking on YouTube, any advice on managing Windows 365 cloud PCs with Intune? I have not set up that scenario, but I know it's a valid option in Intune. I have 2 normal Windows 365 business clients that I use. They are enrolled into Azure AD. I manage them through Intune, but it's not the enterprise suite that you also can provision from the Intune platform. So, anything you'd like to add there, Andrew?
Nope, not really, unfortunately.
Yeah. What I have learned is they're pretty cool to upload and download stuff from. You get some pretty good performance from them,
Yeah,
internet speed.
you've had
I wish
quite
I
a bit
had
of
that at home. Yeah.
you've had quite a bit of experience with that now.
Yeah, I wrote a blog post that's been one of my most read blog posts because I needed to upload big chunks to Intune. So I was actually using not that one here, but this one. I got some pretty good upload speeds from the Windows 365 VM.
Were you wanting to share?
Oh, that probably would help it. How about them apples?
That is fantastic.
I have a decent upload speed. Not too bad.
No, not at all.
So, any other questions? All right, then. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Andrew, for hanging in here with me, and hope to see you guys next week, same time.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Thanks.